Master's of Psychology, Neuropsychology concentration. I want to continue to read this video, this article. Um, the battery died on this, but um, just off the top, the it was from the Mayo Clinic, and it was discussing that it was still a little bit dirty, even despite cleaning it. Mainly books and clothes, but I go to the gym and I study and read a lot, mainly to everybody who listens on the online or just finds the videos amusing, or maybe something they can learn and apply in their lives, or just use as an interesting conversation. So I was I basically reviewed everything on the first page that had to do with the generalities of kidney disease, chronic kidney disease, what the numbers mean, and if anyone has any disputes or about that, they feel free to update me. If I'm inaccurate about something, please, I encourage people to help me understand better. Maybe putting a reference would be nice. But from what I've read and what I understand, I think I provided general information and basic information that anybody in the world can verify how the kidneys function and what normal glomerular filtration rate numbers are, estimated GFR on your blood work. There's a number for African Americans and there's a number for non-blacks. Number for African Americans or blacks is typically a little bit lower. The norm is typically a little bit lower. So I would keep that in mind too. What they usually use in conjunction, so also with the GFR, is urine analysis. So they look at the person's urine and they determine if there's protein in the urine or above a certain amount, right? Proteinuria, albuminuria is what it's also called. So the way I learned this was no protein is supposed to be in the way I understand it is the way, in general, no protein is supposed to be in the urine, and no, and I think they also measure creatinine levels in the blood. So that's the way I remember it. No protein in the urine and no creatinine in the blood. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'll be happy to look that up. If you put a reference, that'll be great too. Or at least above a certain number, right? So there's cutoff numbers. So basically, they check the urine and they check the kidney functioning through the blood, the estimated glomerular filtration rate, EGFR, and the urine. They see if there's protein in the urine. And based on both those numbers, they can determine how the kidneys are functioning. A nephrologist, NEPH, nephrologist is the specialist doctor that went to medical school and then also went to specialty, a school that specialized in after going to medical school, to learn about specifically the kidneys. And they also likely learn about how the liver works and all the the stomach, and all the nearby organs, or just basically anything that one would need to know to be an expert in that field, right? So nephrologist is the one, NEPH, ROL, nephrolo, NEPH, ROLOGIST. So NEPH, ROLOGIST, nephrologist. They're the specialty doctor specifically trained to tell anyone about their kidney functioning. So that's the head honchos on that specific organ, right? So they could talk about evidence-based treatment, what numbers are good, what numbers could be problematic, and when the person should definitely do something, what the alternative options are. how they could improve their numbers as well. So my tablet is now loading, turning back on. It's getting power back. I just started. But once again, it's the EGFR number on your blood work, along with a urine sample to determine if there's protein in the urine. That's what they use to determine how your kidneys are functioning. And um, what I understand about it, and has come to my understanding, that from kidney.org, a GFR or an EGFR of 90 or better is normal. So I was learning, some medications or drugs can affect that. I don't know what degree. So you want to check maybe with a blood test or something to see if that's occurring. You want to have a good amount of protein in the blood. Um, um, None or very little in the urine, right? Because then that means it's a sign that the kidneys are not filtering it correctly. Um, and you don't want to have a high level of creatinine in the blood. I think the numbers go up to 1.04 or 1.09 or something like that. I don't remember the exact units, but in the United States, from all the different blood works that I've seen from different labs and from different people or various people, they measure them in this exact same units. So I'm talking about the same units that everyone gets in the United States. Um, okay, and it's usually like milligrams per deciliter or something like that, but I don't know exactly. So I'm not gonna grab the notes to look at it, but they're typically always the same from the ones that I looked at. If you get a different lab, you want to ask your doctor for the reference values and what does it mean, interpretation, what's the interpretation of this blood work? Should I do something about these levels of protein or creatinine or GFR levels being too low? Below 60 is chronic kidney disease. If it raises again, um, which it can raise again, um, based on what you do, your lifestyle, it can raise. Um, then you might not have chronic kidney disease anymore. If it goes above 70, it goes above 80, like 90. You're on your way up there to pretty much normal kidney functioning when you get to an EGFR of 90 or above. So um, I would really seek second opinions if you hear something different um, that it cannot raise. I would seek a second opinion. I would go to a specialist. The nephrologist is the kidney doctor. They went to medical school, and then they went to school specifically to um, provide medical guidance regarding kidney functioning, kidney disease, chronic, kidney failure, which is extremely low GFR numbers or values. But in my experience, my number has fluctuated based on if I sleep, if I exercise, if I don't exercise, if my blood pressure is controlled. Um, my numbers change, and other people's numbers are able to change and get better as well. So um, it can get better with what the person does. Although I've seen on sites that talk about kidneys, like kidney.org or maybe it was Mayo Clinic, that um, a lot of times there's what's called permanent damage. So if the number gets too low, or if the person starts to have or show symptoms of kidney failure, or not kidney failure, but chronic kidney disease, then it's like too late. But meaning that not that it's too late to do anything, but that there is some impairment, there is some damage structurally. But from what I've seen, and I'm not a medical doctor, I haven't seen 100,000 cases like some nephrologists have. Um, my experience, my numbers gone up based on if I eat, if I exercise, if I sleep, if I drink plenty of water, if my blood pressure is controlled. If I'll go through that again. If my blood pressure is controlled, if I sleep well, if I exercise, and if I drink plenty of water, or if I abstain from drinking coffee. It's a diuretic. So a diuretic makes you go to the bathroom. Coffee is one of those, and there's some studies that show that coffee could affect kidney functioning. So um, that's my own personal anecdotal evidence, and then I've also seen it in other people, and I've read as well online how the numbers can actually raise again. But getting back to 90, if it gets back to 90, suppose I'm guessing that there may be some type of um, really sensitive microscope or ultrasound that one can get, or some type of test that's performed that can show, okay, kidneys are working perfect now. They're working normally now. They're at 90 or above, or 70 or 80. They're within a very good range of the people your age. And you know what? There's still structurally, when I look at it on ultrasound, or when I look at it on a some type of high-powered diagnostic imaging device, I still see a little bit of damage, but that's always going to be there. But they're working perfectly anyway, because you've controlled all the environmental circumstances that affect your kidneys: your sleep, your blood pressure, um, what you eat, what you consume, um, whether you intake diuretics, you've controlled that, and you've controlled your water consumption and your exercise, and your numbers are as great as they as good as they possibly can, good enough to be normal. So they're working normally. You don't have anything to worry about, which I think that's a conversation that can be had, can be achieved, and people could feel good about that, because that means that they work towards something. They set a goal, they work towards something, and they achieved it. That's what people do in all of their life, in their whole life, whether it's making money, whether it's paying off debt, whether it's raising a kid, whether it's um, raising a family, whether it's being the type of husband or wife or family member you want to be, or whether it's raising money for a good cause. You set a goal and you accomplish it. So that's something that anybody could be proud of, as even if they work towards that goal and say they don't succeed, but they put forth effort. So even that effort is something to be celebrated. Like, yeah, I did something and I tried. Um, I'm proud of that. I'm happy. I'm truly, genuinely happy about that. I believe that that's something that could be motivating for somebody, even if you know things may not look. It may be the outlook might not be great. It might be grim. People might be losing hope. But sometimes doctors also prescribe blood pressure medications to control blood pressure. Say if they're not able to control it themselves, or anyone's not able to help kidney functioning. Sometimes the blood pressure medications can have result in some worsening of it. So other times, many times it can help. So you have to always monitor it and see what's being controlled the best way, what's working and what's not. That's just what you always gotta do. It's like driving. It's like when I'm driving, do I want to close my eyes at some point? Like, no. I always got to monitor what's going on. I always have to monitor to make sure that nobody's coming in my lane, that I'm not going in anyone else's lane. Things like that. That I stop on time. That the, you know, the that the lights aren't changing on me, you know, that I'm not running into anything or no one's running into me. You always got to monitor. So that's the way I look at it. Um, and you know, that's my unapologetic stance on that. You know, you have to monitor this stuff. Now, if I'm somebody who's um, been through the medical system and have grown disenchanted, especially with the pandemic and um, the state of everything right now, I can understand that. But don't let one doctor, one nurse, one opinion affect you and what you could do. You know, you're only one person. You only have one life to live. Um, Never let any of that affect your decision, what you can do. You know, getting second opinions, going to a different hospital, searching on the computer, asking this person, asking that person, asking people who have had experiences, good and bad, what to do. How do I solve these problems? How do I fix this? Because if you do it long enough, you're bound to find somebody who can, if they can't actually solve your problem for you, then they can even probably make you feel good about your situation and make you just feel uh, happier because you can connect with them and relate with them on some level. You can find somebody who's been through the same struggle that you have to support you as well. So I'm not a fan of, like, you know, any one authority dictating every single thing. I believe that people should listen carefully to what people say, maybe write it down. I like to write it down. Sometimes I like to let my brain mull on it, you know, chew it up for a long time so I understand it. And even if I disagree, then I still make sure I understand what they're talking about before I move on to another person or another opinion or find a way to actually solve a problem. It's just problem solving. From day one, people were born and they problem solve. You have to. I mean, if you didn't, then you know, yeah, I don't know how anybody would still be living right now. That's just what we do. Um, if it's a very new thing, a very new disease, a very new infection or type of virus, or you know, with the pandemic, then it just becomes even more, you know, um, about searching, you know, um, getting the right data, getting evidence base, finding, you know, I was listening to something, and I know this is getting into a different area, but um, this is just in general about problem solving and staying open, staying open to um, hearing different options, um, but also going with the evidence-based science. So, you know, I think that with just on a side note, talking about like the pandemic, just for the idea or the concept of dealing with a very new thing, right? So some diseases were just new at, or the medical field and even the mental health field is new at working with or trying to treat. When that happens, like you can have half the people that are experts saying one thing and half the experts saying another thing. Half the experts say you should eat eggs, the other half say eggs are bad. So it's like whenever there's something new, there could always be these experts that are tugging in different directions that all find this evidence, right? But how much of that evidence has um, a really good methodology? How much of the research has randomized controlled trials? How much of the research has a higher effect size, right? So you have statistically significant, you have clinically significant, and then you have effect sizes, right? So it takes time to actually like determine all of these things, right? So like 10 years, 20 years, you know, then they could say, oh, you know what? In this particular situation for this specific person at this dose or this type of surgery or this type of their mental health treatment works. But you see how specific that parameter is? And that takes a whole lot of time. It You can have the whole, just for this exact example, you could have the whole world talking about COVID, and it still takes a long time. Some therapies and some treatments haven't even been published, right? Some therapies and some treatments work for some people, and we haven't even gotten down to genes, right? The medical field has not even had the time really to look at gene effects. What are the gene effects? Some people have certain enzymes that help them process things better than others. You know, what about if they're taking this medication? What about if they're taking that medication? You know, like naproxen and the recommendation to not take a leave before you get your vaccination because it reduces, it has evidence reduction in the effectiveness of the vaccination. All of these little tiny factors people have to study over many years. And they have to put people in randomized trials, observation even. They have to maybe even settle for a self-report in some cases or some situations. And then after all this time, then they could say, with a certain degree of confidence, that this specific treatment, this specific medication works for this specific population of people and it's safe, right? That's how that's how much goes into this stuff. So there's always a lot of gray area. So that's where all the confusion and the arguments and the disagreements come from, because it's almost like trying to put everybody in a one size fits all type of scenario. But I agree with a lot of the evidence based about, reduction in mortality and hospitalization because of vaccines, but everything else about mandating it and all that stuff, you know, I don't have an answer for any of that. Um, but it just takes so long to like develop and know what's going to happen with each each individual's type of person and each individual type of treatment. It takes so long. You can't do it overnight. You can say with a certain amount of certainty, but that's about it. And then if something happens or something arises, what's the plan B plan? Where do you go? Which hospitals are taking people? Which, can they do an online telehealth type of thing? What can you do? Who do you call? But that was just a side note about the complexity and nuance and in new treatments for new conditions or new diseases or new mental health concerns that people are learning about, right? Even in the neurodegenerative diseases, um, Alzheimer's, dementia, mild cognitive impairment, Parkinson's. Every single day, there's new treatments. There's new things that are working. There's natural, um, uh, new or nutrition-based ways that people are combining that with what they're already doing to give them maybe better memory or more energy. But they're always learning about this stuff. It doesn't stop, and then you could look down into even the gene level. You know, maybe some things work better on some people just based on their genes. How long does that take to figure out? You know, like just in this country alone, the United States, there's 330 million people. How long will it take to figure out every single factor that's going on with every single treatment, if it's working? And if there's an effect size, what's an effect size? If there's a good enough effect, what's an effect size? Effect size is um, what does it matter? What's the significance of this treatment? Let's give an example. Someone's 6'2" and someone's 6'4", and they both play basketball. Okay? Is that statistically significant? Well, 6'2" and 6'4", it might be. Maybe 6'2" and maybe 6'3" and 6'6". That's 3-inch difference. That might be statistically significant, right? Like you have on one hand, um, 5 times 12 is 60, and then you have another 12 that's 70, 72, 75 inches versus 78 inches. That would be 3 over 78, that's a statistical difference. That's significant difference, right? Or maybe it's a moderate or small clinically statistical of moderate or small clinically significant, statistically significant difference. But then you have, okay, so whatever, the numbers mean that they're much taller, 6'6" versus 6'3". Okay, what does that mean for a center? Who cares? Is it clinically significant? Does it matter if the center is 6'3" or if the center is 6'6"? What does clinically significant mean? Well, that just means that they'll be able to block the ball a lot better against a wider range of people. Okay, so it's clinically significant. We measured that. But what's the effect size? Does it matter? Well, in the situation of, let's say, a championship NBA game, yes, it might matter. It might matter because the person who's 6'3" just may, and I'm just making something up to talk about effect sizes now. Because somebody who's 6'6" may just block 2 more shots than somebody who's 6'3". So now you have effect size down pat. So that's all the things that they got to study. And let's even talk about genes, Before they're able to say, you know what, this or that treatment works for this population, that population, this age group, that age group, people with these genes, people with those genes, at this time of the day, at that time of the day. Like there's so many millions of factors they have to determine. And that's the confusion. So you can have half the people on one side and half the people on the other side, and both are right for the time being. So that's the complexity of research in every single field. Every field has research. Every single field has research. I don't know about art and stuff, but literature. But, every single field has research. So that's how complex it is. But when talking about the kidneys and the kidney functioning, you go to your nephrologist. Maybe, if you have a nephrologist, if you have a health plan, it's good to get one of those. No matter what side of the hell you're on, get your health plan. Because you can check things that you wouldn't know about without it. Blood tests can test things that you don't know that you might have and treat them early. You want to treat early rather than late, because then you have a better chance of surviving or quality of life, a better quality of life. Then the next thing I was supposed to go into was treatments from the Mayo Clinic. And going to nephrologist or your primary doctor, they could discuss any of those as well with you. I just talked about like blood pressure medication as one of those treatments. But then again, I talked about effects, side effects, and all these different things. You want to at least hear them, know them. So if something happens, you say, wait a minute, I think this is happening. Let me go, fix that, resolve that, cure that, treat that, go to back to my doctor. But it's not an easy process. Who wants to keep doing that when you got kids, you got the game, you got your boys, you got your friends, you got cool things you're doing, you got some other areas that might be stressing you out. Who wants to keep doing that? But my opinion, I think it's definitely worth it. That's just my opinion, though. I cannot direct anybody. And all of this, once again, is for informational purposes only. So going to Mayo Clinic, kidney.org, it'll talk about all the same things that I was reviewing. If I'm wrong, if I'm making any mistakes, you can let me know. I want to continue to be someone who hears people and checks if I'm accurate or if I'm valid or if something is wrong or something is unknown, because that's what I think of as just good practice. You don't have to put it as intellectual integrity or any of that stuff. It's just smart. And I'm not saying that's like, I think that's just the right thing, at least for me. So I never take offense to any of that, and I always try to learn from my feedback. Um, but once again, you know, kidney functioning is pretty important. Liver functioning is important. They're kind of tied to one another. You have the the AST, and the ALT numbers that talk that directly, and your blood work, they directly link to your kidney, your liver functioning as well. Um, and you have those reference values. You know, as long as they're within a certain range, you can pretty much say that, you know, you, you're not experiencing liver failure. You know, so they use all of those things in conjunction, all of those tests and diagnostic procedures, sometimes even getting an ultrasound of the kidneys or liver to determine what's going on and what's the best way to treat the person. Um, and you know, ask questions, probably write some things down before you're going to go to them. Maybe you could even, you know, ask questions that are generally recommended from Mayo Clinic or from kidney.org or from any other reputable website or medical doctor or group of nephrologists online that put those and put those online for people to ask. Um, that's important, you know, so that you know how it's working, how not to get yourself into any health problems, or how to um, rectify the health problems that you have now. Um, so, you know, not succumbing to cognitive laziness, and I can even accuse myself of that as well, because I have, you know, at least some insight, and sometimes, you know, maybe I'll take half a day off and say, you know what, I'll come back to this tomorrow, because at that point I just cannot think about it anymore, or read about it anymore, or write about it anymore, or learn. But I come back to it, and then I have a fresh perspective, and then everything that I learned from the other day is downloaded, right? It's remembered. I get some sleep, get some food, exercise, and then I say, you know what? Ah, yeah. Now I can put all these pieces together and I understand it a little bit better. So, um, yeah, you know, the cognitive laziness. It's I don't like this whole, you know. I think with health, anybody could, if I mean, it's so intrinsically tied to your life that, you know, many people can learn about their health and how to improve it. That's just what I believe, and I'm not saying that belief is right, but that's just what I believe. That it's so intrinsically tied to what's important and sacred to every single person in the world that, you know, people are inclined to try to learn about it. You know, people can say whatever they want about your intellect, about your education, about who you are, a good or a bad person, but you're still inclined to like learn about your health and, you know, want to be healthier and work to that. That's what I believe. And that's just my belief, and that's my opinion. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the study from neuroscience. Was it neuroscience.com or neurosciencenews.com, and it talked about Brazilian nuts. Basically, it's what is the main ingredient is um, um, there's it's the ingredient that you can find in wheat, nuts, and grains, um, from a research study that was published, that basically can help one who was experiencing cognitive decline, or cognitive impairment, memory problems, learning problems. Um, um, and this was done in mice. This was studied in mice, but they're theorizing that that model also may apply to humans. So people who eat, um, nuts, meat, even um, Brazilian nuts have the most of this ingredient. I forgot exactly what it was. Again, it's not something that's stated all the time. Um, uh, Wheat, nuts, meat, all have it, and grains all have it. And Brazilian nuts have the most abundance of this specific nutrient that has basically evidenced in mice that had a stroke that they learned better. They did, their maze better. They improved their their they improved their cognitive functioning. They had less memory loss and less. They had better learning. They usually do mazes, and after consuming um, that main ingredient in Brazilian nuts, they were able to significantly improve. And I do apologize for not having it written down, but this thing, this laptop or the tablet is not actually charging all the way. But I did post it up on Facebook, my Facebook account, and what's the name of that thing? Whatever. If it comes to me, I'll remember it, and then I'll talk about it as well. But um, it was a neuroscience article, so that may be, something that older people start to supplement. It may be used to as you know an independent variable or something that they study in elderly folks with stroke to see if their memory also improves after the consumption or supplementation of that specific um, ingredient. I don't know why I don't remember the Brazilian nuts. But yeah, so I just found all of that interesting and wanted to share with everybody as well. So that's just a little bit about kidneys, kidney functioning, you know, medication that they can give for blood pressure, and also to control the kidney functioning, the importance of sleep, adequate water consumption, the effect of the possible negative effect of diuretics. Diuretic is something like coffee or even a medication that affects the kidneys to help to flush, like a water pill to help reduce the amount of water that the person retains or swelling. Um, how those can affect the kidneys as well. So always asking your doctor, going back, maybe asking a specialist doctor um, to see what is improving and how you can improve your kidney functioning. And I would be interested to know if a nutritionist would know about different things that you could do to help blood pressure, kidney functioning, um, and also what's been proven or has shown effectiveness for cognitive impairment. So, and I haven't eaten in like a couple of hours, so I should probably eat some food. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it, and I hope that this video can guide you in the right direction. Also about meats specifically, there was research that was published regarding TMAO, which when somebody consumes red meats or even red meats specifically have the most. Um, when you consume red meats, it has been shown in people to increase the levels of TMAO in the blood, which now they're researchers and medical professionals are determining whether they want to use that as a biomarker for increased risk of stroke or cardiovascular risk. So TMAO in the blood, it doesn't look to be a great thing. Um, Researchers were publishing, it's once again, it's a new thing, right? So they're trying to figure it out. Can I eat meat? Can I eat white meat, red meat? What type of meat is better? What are the TMA levels when I eat this type of meat versus that type of meat? Fish, poultry, how much TMAO is evidenced after people eat that? And what's the connection to mortality, death, or cardiovascular risk, heart attack, stroke, when people have high levels of TMAO? What matters most, and what's clinically significant? So that's what they're trying to parse out now. They were talking about fish, and that it also raises those levels, and we're wondering why there was differences in research evidence on when people eat fish and still have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease or heart disease. I mean, they still have higher levels of TMAO, but some researchers were arguing that it could be because of the greater amounts of EPA or fish oil that also comes with fish consumption, which also is able to have many protective effects in the body. So I think I'll just leave the end of the video there. We talked about chronic kidney disease, what it is, treatments, what a nephrologist is, interactions between different medications, getting second opinions, how difference of opinions may just be normal. Also, trying to motivate yourself by talking to other people about it, finding different options for yourself, trying different ways to improve, and patting yourself on the back. Not really patting yourself on the back, but like actually being happy about whatever you do because you did something. Even if it was unsuccessful, that means that you put forth an effort, which is, I think, great. Talking to other people that may have been in the same situation or have had similar situations. Problem solving is something that can get can kind of get bogged down, but I definitely believe that that it's a good thing in my opinion, and to engage in that problem solving. And I don't think that it's easy to get blood work, check your blood pressure frequently, check the effective medications, if it's working, if it has an effect on your kidneys, if it has an effect on any of the blood work parameters, if it's toxic. I mean, it's a lot of work to go back to the doctor and see what's going on, and to look at the numbers and see what they mean and ask questions. But I think that at the end of the day, like, the only benefit is you learn about your body and how it works and what doesn't work. And maybe that means that you improve, or maybe that means that you can talk to other people, make a friend, and at least have that camaraderie and fellowship. Talking about even the struggle, the heartache, the problems, and the challenges can create a bond even, and especially in difficult times like this. And then having a sense of hope as well, when everything is not working, or when some things are not working and other things you wish were working faster, or better, and then appreciating what you do, what is working, and magnifying that as well. So all of that can come from, seeking other people with a similar situation as well. So it doesn't have to always just be about problem solving. Um, but those are several things that I talked about. Then I talked about new research on TMAO, which is produced in the gut after someone eats meat, and how it's been researched as and evidenced in the research as increasing risk for cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke. But it's a new area of study, so people don't know that much about it, and we're wondering why fish, in some cases, helps people, like the Mediterranean diet, and also the fact that or the protective effects of eating fish, even if the person gets more TMAO levels, higher TMAO levels, because of the fish oil, the EPA inside the fish that protects from that extra risk of heart attack, stroke, because the person has higher TMAO levels. Also, I think the research was talking, and I don't have know the research on the top of my head, but I did post on it, post up about it on my Facebook. Um, the what's it called? Antibiotics. How that also kind of resets those numbers, and I know that there's a whole thing about, especially in third world countries or still developing countries, I think is what they call it now, or emerging developing countries that antibiotics, um, the problem with overuse of antibiotics. I'm not suggesting anybody do that. I'm just talking about specifically the evidence that shows that the antibiotics can help to reduce those TMAO levels. Um, and then there's other ways to help reduce those TMAO levels as well, like decreasing the amount of red meat consumption and increasing the amount of like kind of plant-based vegetarian diets, which I think that, the mainstream, a lot of people are aware of the benefits of that as well. Also, I know that there's still research out there that talks about like potential foodborne illness from eating too many plants and stuff like that. So washing plants off and checking to make sure they're good to eat. Generally good advice. But I don't want to run on. But again, this is about chronic kidney disease, TMAO, different treatments like blood pressure, monitoring your blood pressure medications, sleep, water intake, and exercise on the kidney functioning, who to talk to. Specialist is called the nephrologist for kidney functioning, and then also research on that. And I don't know how to term it either, if it's a compound, but something inside Brazilian nuts that's also in meat and also in grains and wheat that has been shown in mice in neuroscience research to improve cognitive impairment after they get a stroke. And maybe that could be applicable in humans. So once again, this is Eric Michael Lloyd. I have a master's in psychology, neuropsychology concentration. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, no matter where you